If you don't have $4, $3, or $100 to get started wholesaling real estate, this video is for you because I'll be showing you how you can get started wholesaling with no money out of pocket. Let's get into it. So now, when you don't have any money to get started wholesaling real estate, you have to get more creative. You can still find prospects, but you got to find prospects the free way. And the first free way that you can find prospects is driving for dollars. And no, I'm not talking about the driving for dollars app, because of course you got to pay, I think, $50 a month for that. When I say drive for dollars, only thing you need is your car. You need some gas in your car, and you need pen and paper. What you want to do, you want to go on streets that you never been on before, or you want to go on streets that you have been on before, and you want to look for properties that may look like it's vacant, or may have high grass, or may have a hole in the roof, or just have some cosmetic issues going on with the property. Now, I would also say look for properties that are absentee owner properties, but it's going to be kind of hard to identify that, especially if someone is actually living in the property. But those are the properties that you will want to go after first, because you know there's going to be some level of distress there. So that's your first way that you'll be able to generate free leads if you don't have any money. The second way that you'll be able to get started in wholesaling with no money out of pocket is your code enforcement list. And I know you're probably like, well, how would I find a code enforcement list? One way that you'll be able to do that is through a code enforcement website. Now, a lot of counties do have properties that have code violations on a website that you can go to. And most of the time you can just type in code enforcement in such and such county, and that'll pull up properties that may have violations that you can take a look at, and you can put them in an Excel spreadsheet, clean it up, and potentially skip trace, which I'll show you how you can skip trace for free a little bit later. And also, your county should have a code enforcement office that you can go to. That's going to take a little bit more time because you're going to have to physically drive up to the code enforcement office. And when you get there, it may be some issues with actually speaking with the right person, because if you go up there and say, hey, I want the code enforcement list, they may act like they don't know what you're talking about, even though they do know what you're asking for. But you need to make sure that you're not able to get it on a website first before you go in and visit a code enforcement office to get property information. Now, the third way that you can potentially find motivated sellers is from your government website. You can go look for tax delinquent properties, and you can get this information for free. Just go in Google and type in tax delinquent properties in such and such county. And most of the time your government website will pop up, and you will see that there's a list of tax delinquent properties there that may be 5,000 behind in taxes or 10,000 behind in taxes. And of course, like I said, you got to spend a little bit more time and go through the data and make sure that you're actually looking at residential properties instead of commercial properties, unless you want to go after commercial properties. But that's just another way that you can find motivated sellers, and you can find it for free. But you got to be willing to put the time in, because you don't have the funds to go pull this list off of a software such as PropStream or ListSource or whatever list provider that you would use in the future once you start generating deals. So take the time to do that and build you a tax delinquent list of sellers that you want to reach out to. Now, the fourth way, which is, in my opinion, the best way to pull motivated seller lists for free, is at your local courthouse. You can pull a few different lists at your courthouse. You can pull pre-foreclosures, you can pull eviction lists, you can pull a divorce list. It's so many different lists that you can pull there, and guess what? That's gonna be the most updated data that you can actually find. And guess what? It's all free. Now, I would recommend you put a day aside or 2 days aside to gather all the information that you need. A couple of hours in the first day, you may be learning more about your courthouse to figure out how things work. But once you get in rhythm of pulling these lists every week until you get your first deal, it's going to become a breeze for you whenever it's time for you to go back up there and get the next set of pre-foreclosures or the next set of evictions that is coming available. Now, when you go up to the courthouse, of course, you got to identify where the pre-foreclosures are located. But what you can actually do, you can go up to the counter and say, hey, is there any type of booklet or something that has all the pre-foreclosures in the county that recently happened in the past 6 months? And 9 times out of 10, they're going to point you in the right direction. Now, most of the time, what a lot of people go up to the desk and say is, hey, where's the pre-foreclosure list? There's not going to be a list. You got to build a list yourself. Now, in my county, what you have to do is go and look at the booklet. You need to see the properties that is currently in pre-foreclosure, and you take a picture picture of them. That's the same thing with the eviction. You go look at the records, you take a picture of the divorce records. And what you do once you get home, you create a spreadsheet that has your pre-foreclosures that you pull at the courthouse. And from there, of course, the next thing you do, make sure that the data is clean, and then you just skip trace it in the skip trace provider that I'm going to mention that will be free a little bit later. But that's why I like the Courthouse so much, because you know you get the most recent data. You know that these sellers are in distress, and you're able to help someone out of a stressful situation. So those are the free ways that you can pull your motivated seller data without having to pay any money. And like I said, you will have to spend a lot of time to get this stuff done. But when you don't have any funds, this is the way to get this done. Now, if you're enjoying the content so far, please just hit the like button, subscribe, and click the notification bell so YouTube will see that this video is valuable and they'll push this video out to a larger audience. And also, I've been getting a lot of messages over on Instagram regarding potentially JVing a deal with me. So I created a web form where you can actually submit your deals to me either at the link below in the description, or you can go over to my Instagram and click the link in my bio. And what you do, you just fill out the form and the deal will come over to me and I'll take a look at it and see if we can get it closed. But definitely feel free to check that out. And like I say, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now let's get back into the video. All right, so now it's time to talk about how we would actually contact these sellers for free. The very first thing that you need to do after you have all these different list choices, such as tax delinquent, pre-foreclosure, eviction, vacant properties, the very first thing that you need to do is skip trace the data. And I know you probably like, well, I don't have any money to skip trace. Don't worry, I got you covered. If you go on truepeoplesearch.com, they do have phone numbers on there. And what you have to do, you have to go in and individually put in each seller name and address, and it'll pull up phone numbers for that particular seller. Now, I'm going to tell you up front, this may not be the most updated data because it is free. And I don't know how often it is updated, but the fact that you have a phone number that may potentially be the seller's phone number for free, I say go for it. Because guess what? It only takes one of those phone numbers to be the correct one, and one seller that said, yes, I want to sell, and one offer. And guess what? You have your first deal where you can invest in using softwares such as Bat Skip Tracing or Skip Genie or whatever skip tracing service that you would use. But that's the next step after you built your motivated sellers list, is skip trace your data. And now let's get into the next part of what you need to do after you skip trace. So once you skip trace your data, of course, I always talk about like an omni-channel marketing presence where you're going to send ringless voicemails or SMS or cold calling. Guess what? You can still do the same thing. But what you have to do it all one by one. It's going to take time. It's going to be a hassle, but it just depends on how bad you want to do this. What you have to do, I would recommend getting a Google Voice number, which will actually be free. And make sure you check with your state and make sure everything that I'm mentioning is legal for you, because I don't want you to get in any trouble for anything. But you will definitely want to get a Google Voice number. You will want to make calls to each seller that's on the list that you pull out of True People Search. And the sellers that you don't get a response from, your next step would be to send them a text from that Google Voice number. And in the standpoint of a ringless voicemail, of course, it wouldn't be a ringless voicemail, but if you don't get a response from the seller while you're making a call, you can leave the seller a voicemail and hope for them to reach back out to you. And don't just stop there. I know you don't have the money for Google Ads, so what you would want to do, you may want to try to search for this particular person on Facebook. If you can find them on Facebook or Instagram and you can reach out to them and say, hey, I would love to purchase your property off of 123 Main Street. Would you be interested in selling? A lot of people are not doing that. And even if you have money, you should have somebody to actually reach out to people on social media, because there's a lot of sellers on social media. So definitely take advantage of that as well too. But those are the marketing channels that you will use, and best believe it's going to take time up front. But once you get that first deal, you can reinvest into your business to where you can speed up the process to your next deal. Now, this is something that you should do before you even start anything. Honestly, before you even get started on any of the steps that I just mentioned, you should do this step right here first. you should go set up a free Podio, which stands for a customer relationship management software. If you have that set up, any leads that you generate, you need to be putting them in a follow-up campaign or putting them in your free Podio setup to where you set a date for when you're going to follow up with that particular seller in the near future. So set a free Podio up, because that's going to make sure that your leads that you're generating are not falling through the cracks later on down the line. Because I've had situations where I've reached out to a seller, I didn't properly store them in a Podio or whatever CRM that I was using, and I go back and check 6 months later and they sold the property. And sometimes they sold the property for less than what I actually offered them. And the only thing that happened in that situation is I didn't follow up with them like I needed to, and I didn't build the rapport that I needed to where when they were ready to sell, they would reach back out to me. So make sure you have that set up, and I guarantee in a couple of months or whenever, you will definitely generate a deal from follow-up. I know you're probably like, well, how do I determine the people that go inside of my Podio? Like I said in many videos, you're gonna have different responses. You will have people that say, I'm not interested, which they wouldn't go into Podio. You can have people that say, wrong number. You can have people that say, not at this time. You can have people say, make me an offer. You can have people that say, the property is sold. You can have people say, how did you get this number? And the main two sellers that you will be putting in your Podio is sellers that say, not interested at this time, they want to sell at a later date, or you have sellers that say, what's your offer? Those are the main two sellers that you're going to put inside of your Podio, but you also will have to qualify them to make sure that they are a qualified lead to actually go into your Podio as well too. But those are the responses you get, and if you get a seller that says, I'm not interested, you're not going to put them in Podio. You're going to put them into your Google Calendar, which is another free way of tracking the people that you talk to, and you can say, hey, I'm going to follow up with this person in 6 months since they're not interested in selling now. And the sellers that say, do not contact me again, of course, you're not going to put them in your calendar at all. You're just going to say, I'm not going to reach out to this person at all because they don't want to be contacted. And the sellers that say wrong number, of course, that means, okay, I need to move on to the next number on the list for that potential seller to see if I can actually get in contact with the right person. But as you can see, it's pretty simple when it comes down to wholesale. A lot of people make it more difficult than what it actually needs to be. But if you follow these steps that I gave you, even if you don't have any money to start out with, you'll definitely generate a deal in no time. And if you want to hear a story on how I generated $8,000 in less than a month, feel free to check this video out here, and I'll see you next time.